I'm Chris Mitchell, coming to you this week with the Knesset, Israel's parliament, in the background. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the U.S. is on the verge of making a bad nuclear deal with Iran. He delivered that message to a joint session of Congress, but President Obama and dozens of Democrats didn't want to hear the warning. CBN's David Brody reports from Washington.
The Prime Minister of Israel, His Excellency Benjamin Netanyahu.
Applause and criticism greeted Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu before a controversial appearance in front of Congress. More than 50 Democrats stayed away, some because of upcoming elections in Israel, others because they felt Republican leaders snubbed the White House by inviting the Prime Minister without any notice. President Obama didn't even watch the speech. This didn't help the rocky relationship between the two leaders. But the Prime Minister took the high road, opening with praise for the president.
Some of what the president has done for Israel might never be known because it touches on some of the most sensitive and strategic issues that arise between an American president and an Israeli prime minister. But I know it, and I will always be grateful to President Obama for that support.
The main tension deals with Iran's nuclear program. In leading the negotiations, the U.S. is pushing to downgrade but not eliminate Iran's ability to make nuclear weapons. Netanyahu told Congress it's the wrong strategy.
This deal has two major concessions. One, leaving Iran with a vast nuclear program. And two, lifting the restrictions on that program in about a decade. That's why this deal is so bad. According to the deal, not a single nuclear facility would be demolished. Thousands of centrifuges used to enrich uranium would be left spinning. Thousands more would be temporarily disconnected, but not destroyed.
The White House has repeatedly said that they want a nuclear-free Iran. They just think that negotiations are the way to get there. Yet even White House officials admit that an actual deal with Iran on nuclear weapons is 50-50 at best. But after the Prime Minister's speech, the president questioned a lack of solutions on Netanyahu's part.
On the core issue, which is how do we prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon, which would make it far more dangerous and would give it scope for even greater action in the region, the Prime Minister didn't offer any viable alternatives.
Add to the speech White House concern that Congress might pass additional sanctions against Iran. The negotiations are at a sensitive stage, and this strong argument couldn't come at a worse time for deal makers.
If anyone thinks this deal kicks the can down the road, think again. When we get down that road, we'll face a much more dangerous Iran, a Middle East littered with nuclear bombs, and a countdown to a potential nuclear nightmare.
Republican Senator Ted Cruz says the president's role of pacifist-in-chief is chiefly to blame for Israel's situation. Do you believe he dislikes, first of all, Netanyahu? Do you believe he has antagonism towards Israel?
Undoubtedly. It is heartbreaking. This administration has been the most hostile U.S. administration to Israel in the history of our country.
And Cruz has harsh words for Democrats who didn't show up for the speech.
David, I'll tell you this. No friend of Israel would boycott a speech by the elected leader of Israel, particularly at a time of enormous peril.
Those words, enormous peril, are ones echoed by Netanyahu. His people remember the Holocaust, and he's determined to never let anything like that happen again.
I can guarantee you this. The days when the Jewish people remain passive in the face of genocidal enemies, those days are over. I can promise you one more thing. Even if Israel has to stand alone, Israel will stand. But I know that Israel does not stand alone. I know that America stands with Israel. I know that you stand with Israel.
David Brody, CBN News, Washington.